So the next session will be dedicated to the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné, which is a collaboration between the AAAI, Stanford Libraries, and the Martin Wong Foundation. It is also the inaugural research project of the AAAI and embodies our commitment to long-term research projects on artists. So this is was my first time working on a digital humanities project, and it was really hard. I was kind of like, oh yeah, we'll just put it on the website and it'll be fine. And it's like, no, it's very much more complicated than that. But it's one thing that really struck me about doing this project is because it involves so many different types of skill sets. It was actually more collaborative than anything else I've ever worked on. A catalogue raisonné might seem like it focuses on an individual, but the format of the project and, with Wong's work, nothing is ever one single thing. So, to bring this point across, I want to read you just from the acknowledgements page of the Catalogue Raisonné. The project's editorial team includes Annalise Bidnell, Mark Dean Johnson, D. Vanessa Kam, Marci Kwon, and Gary Ware. Other team members at Stanford include Catherine Astor, whose enthusiasm, tirelessness, and commitment to the project were outstanding, Gary Geisler and Arcadia Falcone, whose expertise and engagement were tantamount to the project's success, Elisa Alexander, Hannah Frost, Mike Keller, Tom Kramer, Maristika, Maria Martinezzo, and Christina Shen. At the Martin Wong Foundation, Peter Broda and Bob Chu merit special mention, along with Gary Ware, Georgie and Adriana Fee, Mel and Sylvia Moe, Mike and Judy Moe, Maria Teresa Rode, and Karen Young, and those are foundation members that are family members. Foundational support has been provided by Penny Plinkington and Wendy Osloff of PPOW, the Artists Primary Gallery in New York. We also want to recognize the involvement of Gallery Buchholz in Germany, Anglem Trimble Gallery in San Francisco, the Fales Library at New York University, which was the place that made me want to become an art historian, the Anne Bremer Library at San Francisco Art Institute, and the many institutions that provided imagery of Wong's work. We extend our most sincere thanks to the brilliant essayists whose insights enhanced this publication, including Solomon Adler, Dorian Chung, Margo Machida, and Louise Siddons, and to copy editor and consultant Tom Fredrickson and proofreader Nancy Adams. We deeply appreciate, and before that, we also want to acknowledge the amazing team of graduate student researchers, including Del Holton, Paulina Cho, and Jenny Waldo. We deeply appreciate the involvement of artists, friends, and collaborators, including Charlie Ahern, Deborah Beaver-Bauer, Barry Blinderman, Greg Cruikshank, Jeffrey Deitch, Chris Days-Ellis, Dorothy Haynes-Griffin, Cause, and Carla McCormick. Finally, we want to gratefully acknowledge those collectors whose work by Martin Wong are reproduced here, and the many people who granted interviews or provided all manner of other assistance. And I think just that litany of names gives you a sense of the way this seemingly monographic project just opens up onto vast constellations of people. And I also want to highlight one of the things that came out of this project for me, which was a deeper understanding of Wong's engagement with the Angels of Light Free Theater, a radical anarchist counterculture performance group that's largely allied with the Cockettes, although they were, as Greg Cruikshank told me, like the Hatfields and the McCoys. And the Angels of Light had an emphasis on free things, free performances, free food. And given Martin's involvement with them, I'm really, really happy we were able to make this resource freely available online. So the rest of the session will go as follows. I'll begin by playing just a 5-minute introductory video by Cathy Astor, which just kind of gives you an overview of the main features of the Catalogue Raisonné. This will be followed by a 10-minute video recording of remarks by Margo Machida, who I just want to say, is watching over Zoom. I'm getting emails from her, and is just like my hero in life, number one hero in life. Brilliant. She sends her regrets that she couldn't be here today. She very much wanted to, but I think in many ways, like everyone's work is touched by Margo, and her presence is here. So please applaud. Thank you, Margo. They're all applauding for you. And I miss her very much. And then that'll be followed just by brief remarks by Mark Dean Johnson. So I will begin by playing the first video.
Welcome to the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné. This free online resource documents the work of the artist Martin Wong, who was born in 1946 and died of AIDS-related complications in 1999. Today, Wong is best known for his romantic, gritty paintings of New York's Lower East Side, where he lived for 2 decades after growing up in San Francisco. With detailed records of over 800 works of art, including paintings, drawings, poetry, prints, and sculptures, the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné provides an unprecedented overview of Wong's artistic practice. It sheds light on little-known works such as his early ceramics experiments, poem scrolls of the 1960s and 70s, and his collaborations with the poet and playwright Miguel Pinheiro, graffiti writers such as LA2, and the radical queer performance troupe the Angels of Light Free Theater. The project also includes in-depth documentation that will be of interest to scholars and the general public alike, including a comprehensive illustrated chronology, unpublished interviews, audio and video of the artist, and hundreds of new images of Wong's art, including works never previously published or exhibited. In this brief video, I will offer an overview of the project and demonstrate its most exciting and innovative features. Like a traditional catalogue raisonné, the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné provides comprehensive documentation of over 800 works of art, including publication history, exhibition history, and provenance. But the online format allows for functionality beyond a traditional print publication, including high-resolution, zoomable images, free access, and the ability to periodically add or edit entries. There are different ways to navigate the Catalogue Raisonné to search for images of Martin Wong's work. Here on the home page, you can use the facets on the left to focus your search. You can also search for images by title or subject, or do a general search, as in this example for coyote. This example includes multiple images of the same work, which you can scroll through using the image viewer. Under About, you will find information about the Catalogue Raisonné's organization and editorial decisions, bibliographic apparatus including exhibition and publication history, and a wealth of primary source documentation, such as a multi-part interview with Wong's best friend Gary Ware, richly illustrated with unpublished archival images taken by the artist's mother and Ware himself. The project also includes 5 new scholarly essays covering topics including Wong's early ceramic works and his rich array of source material. Additionally, the image catalog features 5 browse groups, which allows you to view images in numerous different curated categories, including decades of Wong's career, medium, selected topics, and exhibitions. For example, under decades, the 1980s category can be viewed and searched. The The Browse group Selected Topics allows you to view the works placed into curated Browse categories by selected genres, series, and motifs, including portraits of known sitters. The Exhibitions category contains selected solo exhibitions within Wong's lifetime. Clicking on an exhibition will bring you to a page with images of the work in that show, which you can then click for more information. Here on the Item Details page, you can click on More Details to see the full list of descriptive information about the work. The Martin Wong online catalog Raisonné is a collaboration between the Martin Wong Foundation, the Stanford Libraries, and Stanford's Asian American Art Initiative, or AAAI. It is the inaugural research project of the AAAI, which seeks to foster innovative research about Asian American artists and makers based on close study of objects and primary sources. The Martin Wong online catalog Raisonné will be updated periodically. We hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the project.
My thanks to the Stanford Asian American Art Initiative for inviting me to share some thoughts for today's historic launch of the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné. After being approached in 2020 to contribute an essay for the project, I dug deep in my archives and unearthed a faded, marked-up transcript from a 1989 interview that I did with Martin that I hadn't seen for decades. This text turned out to be one of the earliest recorded oral history interviews that I conducted, extending over more than 30 years with hundreds of Asian American and Asian emigre artists. The perspectives gleaned from such wide-ranging exchanges about these artists' work and ideas enabled me to reapproach Martin's commentary, touching off what became an intensive 2-year investigation that yielded fresh insights about how his Chinese heritage integrally informed the way that he saw the world and impacted his artistic practice. Close analysis of that transcript provided substantive evidence of the potential of oral history to act as an interpretive tool by enabling focused inquiry into the multiple meanings that visual artists invest in their work and the context that shape their sensibilities. Clues seeded throughout Martin's narrative suggest how his standpoint as a third-generation Chinese American provided the lens to visualize a broad range of transcultural interactions connecting China and the West, the Chinese diaspora in the US, and San Francisco, the city where he was raised. Although Martin and I did not discuss particular pieces, his observations provided the primary framework for my essay by shedding light on his approach to art making, key interests, and the wealth of sources that became a wellspring for his art. Now, certain influences are well documented at this point, including 1930s American social realism, works progress administration mural art, and the Mexican muralists like Diego Rivera, who did major public commissions in the Bay Area. Less commonly, Wong also mentioned the Oakland-born Chinese-American watercolorist Don Kingman and his renditions of San Francisco Chinatown. However, the most revelatory and frankly unexpected influence that Martin embraced was art produced by Chinese for the lucrative foreign trade with the West, in which he cited the 19th century Cantonese painter Lam Qua as his artistic forerunner. Lam Qua, a descendant of a distinguished family of painters working in the Western style, oversaw a commercial studio that produced large quantities of paintings for the Western market, including portraits and scenes of daily life in the port city of Guangzhou, or Canton as is known in the West. Now, Wong admired these painters' ability to swiftly assimilate Western techniques for their own purposes, memorably asserting that whereas, quotes, Caucasian artists look back to their painting traditions of Velázquez or Rembrandt, When I look back on a tradition, it's to Lam Qua, to the Cantonese painting school. Moreover, since Wong's forebears were from Canton, I recognize that he also had a resonant personal connection with that history. Martin's reference to the 19th century China trade painters prompted me to begin looking for precedents in China trade art that bore a visual relationship to paintings he produced. This search for corresponding sources was spurred by his foundational claim in our interview that he did not invent his images, or as he put it, quote, every image derives from something on the outside, not something I imagine. For instance, his 1992 painting, Chinese Telephone Exchange, simultaneously draws on a 1905 archival photograph of this famous San Francisco Chinatown landmark and employs a format that brings to mind the often reproduced China trade watercolor shop of Tinghua, the painter. Tinghua, Lam Qua's younger brother, was one of the most celebrated and prolific Chinese export artists of his day. In this case, both images depict a trio of seated workers whose small figures are subsumed within the surrounding spaces, where the dominant focus is on the businesses themselves, signaled by large overhead signs identifying each establishment. Now, Martin's sourcing of China trade art likewise expands the framework for identifying formal and compositional influences that tie together different bodies of his work, including the paintings of the Lower East Side, cityscapes, and renditions of Chinatown storefronts and building interiors. For example, consider this painting of Wong's 1983 Stanton near Forsyth Street, and the 1825 watercolor Interior of a Silk Shop by an anonymous Chinese artist. Characteristics reminiscent of China trade art are discernible in the artist's repeated use of elements like shallow and enclosed box-like spaces and the frieze-like arrangements of buildings, figures, and objects. Now, these examples offer a foretaste of possibilities for alternate readings of Wong's Chinese-themed work, collectively known as his Chinatown paintings, that too often have been accorded a secondary status as compared to the New York Lower East Side works for which he is best known. There's been a tendency to categorize them as American regionalism, genre painting, and as nostalgic and even Orientalist work that harkens back to the bygone era of the 1930s and 40s, reflecting his vision of the San Francisco Chinatown of his parents' generation. And yet, by shifting the frame to recognize the transcultural dimension of his interest, many of Wong's paintings can also be seen within a continuum of work by his contemporaries, including the major wave of Chinese artists who came to New York in the 1980s, that deals with millennial historical legacies of transcultural contact, interchange, and cross-influence between Asia and the West that enfold the US-Asian diasporas. Now, my discussion with Martin likewise points to kindred interests among other Asian and Asian American artists I've interviewed, including several arriving from Hong Kong and mainland China beginning in the 70s. For instance, the Chinese-born multimedia artist Bing Li, one of Wong's friends in New York, did a large public commission commemorating the voyage of the Empress of China, the first US merchant vessel to depart from New York Harbor for Guangzhou in 1784, marking America's entry into the trans-Pacific trade with China. Li's 1998 ceramic tile mural draws on a compendium of invented pictographs that incorporate and reinvent traditional Chinese symbols and characters. One of Li's motifs consists of interlocking teacups, loosely inspired by feng sheng, an ancient Chinese double lozenge pattern symbolizing good fortune and luck in marriage. This innovative design signifies links forged via the U.S. tea trade with China to denote the two nations' inseparable relationship. In sum, primary source materials, including my 1989 interview, viewed in tandem with the enormous cache of images assembled for the first time, and scholarly writing generated for the Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné, exponentially enlarge the sphere of research in Asian American art history. Moreover, as part of an open source digital humanities platform, these materials are now accessible to audiences worldwide. Taking the revelations from Martin Wong's work as a pivot to more closely consider work by other Asian American artists, this project offers a compelling model for future research. Thank you.
My name is Mark Johnson, and I worked on the project. And I want to say a couple of things. I spoke to one of the 5 editors for the project, and I said, do you have any idea how much time you spent on it? And she said, well, I clocked my hours, and it's over 2,000. So with the 5 editors, with all of the essayists and all of the engineers here at Stanford, we can say clearly there was more than 10,000 hours that went into the Catalogue Raisonné project. But I have to recognize it only happened because of Marci, because it was a faculty initiative. So we are so grateful forever for making that happen. But then I want to give a little bit of backstory just because I'm a storyteller. And to give the backstory, I have to share a little bit about the Martin Wong Foundation and especially the founder of it, the artist mother. And if the artist mother was here today, even though she was this tall, she would come up and pull me off the stage because she said, Mark, nobody ever talked about Vincent van Gogh's mother. Keep me out of it. But it's still so important that I wanted to share a little bit. When Martin Wong died in 1999, his bank account was unusually flush. There was over $100,000. He had just recently been paid for completing a ceiling mural, Miss Liberty Face, depicting the head of the Statue of Liberty at a New York City public middle school at a time when his personal expenses were low as his activity had been significantly curtailed by his final illness with AIDS. After he died and his parents became the inheritor of this estate, his brilliant mother, Florence Wong Fai, told Martin's friends and family it wasn't her money, that she would use it to create an artist foundation, just like Andy Warhol, whose foundation she knew about, as Warhol was one of the many artists whose work Wong had in fact collected. At the time, establishing a Martin Wong Foundation seemed like an almost ludicrous idea. Martin's work was not as well known as it is today, and there seemed little hope of accomplishing very much with that very modest funding that was then available. But Florence Wong Fai's belief in her son was unshakable. She sold the Warhol that was in Martin's collection and contributed her own resources to grow an endowment. She enlisted her family and Wong's friends, as you've heard, and colleagues such as myself to comprise the board. Others who eventually joined the board started to talk to Florence about the importance of a Catalogue Raisonné, which she had never heard of. But she ultimately started to warm up to the idea. Together, we pored over the wonderful Isamu Noguchi Catalogue Raisonné, and she became excited about its potential, as she was really an archivist at heart. Today, we have seen some of its rich potential demonstrated in Kathy Astor's video and heard from Margo about some of Martin's ideas drawn from her own previously unpublished 1989 oral history. The fact that we can update it, and in fact we are continuously updating it, is so miraculous, and that you can listen and hear Martin's own voice in both film and audio recording. And I think that all of us are so moved to see so many images from Florence's photo albums that bring her son back to life. And these will eventually be transferred to the Stanford Library Special Collections. Just like Jan said, you plant the tree. Noguchi planted the tree. Florence died 5 years ago. The Martin Wong Catalogue Raisonné was her gift of love. And we have all shared that love. For Martin, in his incredible, complicated work, IMU UR2, it's an expression of solidarity and also difference and fragmentation at the same time. And that's why we are here. But Florence's commitment to dedicate her resources was also an expression of faith in the future. And I wanted just to tell one other story to wrap it around. 30 years ago, Moira Roth hosted a dinner to introduce me to Hung Liu. And Moira made if many of us knew Martin, some of us knew Moira, some of us knew Hung. And Moira made a beautiful menu and wrote down what we would share. And we were making small talk, and our conversation turned to Zhang Daqian, whose work I and Hung loved. And we were just telling funny stories. You know, he lived in Carmel, the preeminent Chinese painter. And we said, well, you know, he would give funny names to architecture and rooms. Like he named his own house in Carmel Koiju, which means barely inhabitable. And Hung jumped up, said, tonight, I'm going to name Moira Roth's dining room Revolutionary Generosity Dining Room. And I think we are here because of the revolutionary generosity that I see throughout this field. And I was inspired by Jan's talk because it was revolutionary generosity that, that caused him to acquire the collection of tchotchkes. And he said art was a tool to bring it to a museum, but it was more than that because the very generous money that he paid when Florence was 97 paid for her care in a nursing home. Revolutionary generosity. Thank you very much.